And then Jesus tells this story. God's kingdom is like an estate manager who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. Now understand that the Jewish workday was 12 hours, 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening. Some of you are feeling better about your job now, aren't you? and they agreed on a wage of $1 a day. That was probably the going rate of the day. They agreed on a wage of $1 a day, and they went to work. Later, about 9 o'clock, the manager saw some other men hanging around the town square unemployed. Now, understand, these men weren't loiterers. They weren't panhandlers. This was the marketplace. This was the labor exchange. They were there looking for work, and if they didn't find a day's work, they didn't feed their family. And he told them, okay, it's 9 o'clock. Pay attention to the details. He told them go to work in his vineyard, and he would pay them what? A fair wage. Wasn't a dollar amount set, a fair wage. They went. So the 6 a.m. workers, they had agreed to a contract. They're getting paid how much? $1. And then you've got the 9 o'clock workers who were simply promised a fair wage. He did the same thing at noon and again at 3 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, he went back and found still others standing around. He said, "Why are you standing around all day doing nothing?" They said, "Because no one hired us." And he told them to go to work in his vineyard. And when the day's work was over, the owner of the vineyard instructed his foreman, call the workers in and pay them their wages. Start with the last hired and go to the first. And here comes the curveball. I don't know, maybe it's a change-up. Those hired at 5 o'clock came up and each were given how much? $1. And when those who were hired first, 6 o'clock in the morning, saw what they were paid, they assumed that they would get far more. I mean, they're thinking overtime, time and a half, but they got the same. Each of them $1. Taking the $1, they groused angrily to the manager, "These last workers put in only 1 easy hour, and you just made them equal to us who slaved all day under a scorching sun." He replied to the one speaking for the rest, "Friend, I haven't been unfair. We agreed on the wage of $1, didn't we? So take it and go. I have decided to give to the one who came the last the same as you. Can't I do what I want with my own money? Are you going to get stingy because I am generous?" And here it is again. And by the way, it's here again because this is how Jesus finished up the conversation with Peter in Matthew 19. It's the great reversal. Many of the first ending up last, and the last first. Does this story seem fair to you? It doesn't seem fair at all, but keep in mind, this story isn't about our kingdom. This story isn't about the kingdom of capitalism. This story is the story about God's kingdom in life. First of all, we often seek to find significance through performance, through working. We think that the more we do, the harder we work, the more we deserve. And so Christ, on the other side of that column, Christ invites us to find our significance through His grace. That's what this story of the vineyard workers teaches us. It's what it's all about. The workers that only worked an hour got equal pay to those who had put in 12. But when we accept Christ's invitation of grace, we're like that duck, just gliding across the water. And so the invitation of Christ to all of us today is to swim in His grace. Second, in our pursuit of significance, we often try to gain significance through comparison. Jesus invites us to find our significance through contentment. Just minding our own business, appreciating what we already have. The Apostle Paul says that, well, I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. A third way we pursue significance is through accumulation. You know, the one with the most toys wins. And the rich young ruler, he found such great significance in his accumulation of wealth that he couldn't let it go. And I don't need to spend a lot of time on this one because we're all guilty of this thing of accumulation. That's why we have a 3-car garage and can't even get a bicycle in there, huh? Because we like to accumulate. But Christ invites us to gain significance through generosity. The 12-hour workers, they shouldn't have been upset because they got what they had agreed to. But what really got them upset, I think, was the generosity of the landowner. When the spokesman for the first group of workers that were hired questioned the landowner's generosity to the last group that was hired, the vineyard, I love his response. The vineyard owner says, "Can I do what I want with my own money? Are you going to get stingy because I'm generous?" And doesn't that, my brothers and sisters, speak to the nature of God? He holds the wealth of the world in his hands, and if he chooses to pour out a blessing on somebody who seems to be undeserving, there's no labor laws to prevent him from doing that. He can do what he pleases. A fourth way we tend to find significance is through measurement. We want everything to be equal and fair. That's what these 12-hour workers were wanting. They wanted equality. But here's the invitation of Christ. Jesus invites us to find our significance simply through faithfulness. That's what he measures. That's what he measures, faithfulness. To the landowner, the 1-hour workers, we've got to get this. To the landowner, the 1-hour workers were as significant and faithful as the 12-hour workers. You see, God doesn't have an employee of the month program.